All right. Hello, hello. How are we doing tonight? All right. Testing. One, two, three. Testing, testing. Like we got good sound. Hello there, Harley Rider. I think we wore everybody out for the weekend. Hi, Chandler. How was Mr. Chandler and Mr. Brandon today? I was just saying, I think I wore everybody out this weekend. Like, slow to get on tonight. I thought I was going to have a nice, enjoyable day off, and then our tree fell on the neighbor's house. So that made for a long day. Well, hopefully, we'll have more tonight, have a little bit of an audience. We are going to be working on some water terrain to a degree, and then kind of talking about MDF buildings. Provided anybody shows up. If not, then it may be just 2 hours of us talking. You are correct. It is Terrain Tuesday. Well, very good, sir. I find terrain making is very therapeutic. Yeah, the funny weekend kind of makes it weird. We're already into the week. I know I'm wore out. Oh, hopefully I'll get a little going here after we get talking. Well, I hope that you enjoyed your Monday. Anyway, everybody. On just a second, I'm gonna go here and grab something. Oh. Have a little something for scale reference there. Ooh. So we have Cthulhu working on some heels. How about you, Chandler? What's your next project? Your scenes or your schemes? Ah, that makes more sense. Well, hello there, JS Twitch. I know, I see. You're listening, but you're driving. It's okay. You can mentally think, hello, John, and I'll know it. So, Chandler, what ones are you working on right now? Malvernus. Okay, imagine that. And Templars. That seems to be what a lot of people are working on. I guess it has to do with everything coming out in the last Kickstarter. Everybody's high on Malverns and Templars right now. Yeah, that's one that's on my list. I think that black, white, and red would be super cool scheme for Templars. Imagine that, right? Black, white, and red. Yes, I do know why you have Malverns. All right, so we'll give everybody a few more minutes since we're all kind of getting to a late start. Three days of CavCon wore everybody out. Yeah, I saw your picture, Dave, of all your cons. Yeah, Cthulhu, that seems to be kind of a hot paint right now. I've heard several people that are working on using some of the color shifting metallic paints. I probably am not going to get very much painting done this week myself. We have lots and lots of orders to fill. The printers are working overtime right now, printing out Cobras and Spathas. If I the studio and the 3D printers are in the same room, so if I pass out, it's because all of the resin smell up here. I'll tell you, over the years, I have seen some really cool A-to-E's paint schemes with them kind of having a elf vibe to them. A lot of people have really done some really spectacular paint jobs that I've seen over time. And I love metallic paint jobs. I've seen where you base paint it silver or brass or bronze or copper and put a nice black wash on it and then go in and trim them out. Very simple, but very, very effective paint job. Years ago, when I was at Reaper and we were making the scry counters, we sent a bunch of them off to be gold plated. And while we did it, we sent a couple of CAV models and a couple of uh, some of the Reapers of the Apocalypse. I think it was the one that was up on the Lion. I don't know if it's still available or not, but so we got them back. So they're gold plated. I mean, they look like gold jewelry. And then went in and trimmed them out and painted the parts that didn't need to be gold, so the armor and everything stayed gold, or the base of the calf stayed gold. Made for some super super cool, one of a kind paint jobs. I have no idea where they ended up, but they were always a very neat one to take to the shows. Everybody's like, "Where did you get that gold paint?" I said, "No, it isn't gold paint. It's really 14 karat gold plated. Yeah, Vallejo has certainly got a variety of paints. I really like their matte colors and stuff like that. So Pimp My Ride Cav Edition. That was what it was for sure. But we'll just keep visiting for a little bit. Let's see if we get some more people. I hate to get started and then being right in the middle. So I know that you guys always have pressing Cav questions for me to answer. So the big thing, did everybody enjoy the games? Did those come through pretty good over the weekend? Was everybody kind of able to follow along and see what we were doing? Any more Egyptian calves coming? You never know. If we end up bringing in our own plastic production in house, it's really going to open the floodgates for different things that we can do. There won't be nearly the cycle that it takes now to do anything in plastic. Literally, we could decide to do something in plastic and have it ready to go within 2 to 3 weeks. The stuff for the Egyptian units, the decals will be available with the release of the Flashpoint because they are strongly featured in that particular in the first one. Well, I know with some of the rules and stuff, I know we probably didn't go into a depth and explain everything, and it's just like we were talking about. I mean, I wrote the rule, but I don't. With everything that goes on, I get 10 different things going on in my head, and I certainly don't get to play as much as I would like to. So it even takes me a second sometimes to get back on track. But if you're playing regularly and working on that stuff, and especially if you're playing, if you build a faction and that's the force that you're playing, and you get used to remembering, what everybody has, that's the hardest part about playing units on the fly because, you throw something down there that you're not used to playing, so you don't remember what particular essay it has or something like that. So. And I was trying to give, especially since we were doing some indirect fire on Sunday, that's why I was trying to kind of keep some of the models grouped up and stuff so that you could get a better idea of how the AoEs and, when you group up how deadly indirect fire can be because you get so many rolls on multiple units that from a single attack, and that's a big deal. The ammo check for ammo boxes, is that new? I'm not following. The ammo check is for if you roll double ones when you're using a weapon with ammo or limited ammo. But that's always been in there. Is that what you're talking about, Chandler? but not after you fire that weapon. No, the only time that you roll for it is if you roll double ones. Now, one of the things that came up that realistically you should do is if you have fired a weapon or you fired multiple weapons or whatnot, and your target is destroyed or something happens that you're not able to finish the shot or whatever, you should still roll to hit numbers, because if you roll double ones, there's a chance for a jam. That's up between you and your opponent. You can do it either way, but if you're trying to play exactly how it should be played, then anytime that something's been declared, you should still make a roll to see if double ones are rolled. If you're in a real hurry, I wouldn't mess with it. It's not that big of a deal, and you can kind of look at it as a perk for killing somebody that round, something like that as well. It's just how you want to look at it. But by the technicalities of the rules, you should always make to hit rolls, even if something happens that the target's not there anymore. All right, we'll give everybody 2 more minutes, and then we're gonna get to talking about terrain, because it is Terrain Tuesday. I'm going to show you 2 different techniques for making it. I'm not going to be able to go in as much detail with some things. No, the only time that you have to roll for ammo or limited ammo checks are if you roll double ones on the T-hit roll. Overdrive, if you roll double ones, it automatically causes it to shut down. And then particle bolt guns have to make the secondary roll no matter what, because obviously that's something that's a lot more powerful than just a chance that you may jam for ammo. The difference between ammo and limited ammo is the target roll. Ammo is jams on a 1, and limited ammo jams on a 1 and a 2. Oh, if only I had. I promised that I would be good while I was on TV live. Okay, so let's get to talking about terrain. Ideally, water. So obviously we've talked about hills, we've talked about trees, we've talked about rough, and we'll go back and visit those. Right now, I'm just kind of getting some basic techniques down, and then as we get into more projects and so forth and so on, we'll come back and show different things and stuff. But what you see here is my water, what I use for water on my tournament boards. This was a little simpler way to do it because we had to make so many when we were doing the tournaments. In this particular case, this is a kind of a half water piece so that the long edge can go up against the edge of the board. And that's really good for to keep people from just running down the side. That's something you should always try to do on your board, is middle or a third of the way up on either side. Put something that either blocks it or that they have to go around, or something that takes quite a bit of time to go through, so that a lot of people, when they're building boards, tend to congregate everything kind of in the middle, because they know that's where they'll be playing the most. So they end up leaving a gap down one side of the board. And especially the little fast guys will just run along there and never slow down until they get to the other end. And that may be something that you want, but I tend to put something along the edge to kind of slow people down. The other thing that we did when I made these is, since we made everything the same, is you can take two pieces and put them together, so that if you wanted to put like a pond or a small lake out into the board, you can. So you get kind of double duty out of these. And it's really, however you want to do them is just up to you. There's no limit to. It's another one of those things when you're building water. It's just a matter of whatever your little heart desires. And you can also extend this to rivers. That was one of the things I really wanted to work tonight on. But because of CAVCon and Monday, we just didn't have enough time to get everything ready so that it would be dry and so forth. So we'll come back and visit on rivers. But with these particular water pieces, what I did is, just like the trees and such, is you start off with a piece of MDF board. Again, make sure it is real MDF and not the hardboard, because the hardboard generally has a texture on it, and it's just not nearly as easy to work with. You can cut it out into whatever shape that you want to. Like I said, I'll take my bandsaw and chop these up right quick, or however I need to do it. Then take a sander and grind the edges down to give me some curves, some smoother lines. And then you want to make sure that you come back and smooth the edges down. I like to sand these down so that they come down, almost to a point, to an edge. So that way it doesn't stand up as tall on your game board. So when you set it in there, you have a nice smooth edge for it to kind of transition into. On this particular style of water, what I did with these first is I primered them white. And the reason I wanted to do white is because I wanted the water to be brighter. And I actually then went in with my airbrush with 2 or 3 shades of for the colors that I wanted to use for this particular water. This particular MDF is 3 millimeters or 1/8 inch. That's what I use for everything. It's kind of a good in between, so that you get enough thickness that it keeps it steady, especially in smaller pieces, but it's not so thick that you have to do a lot of grinding to get the edges down. And it's easier to cut. That's, like I said, that's the reason I like the MDF board better than the hard board, because the hard board is a lot harder to sand, to cut, everything. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the Home Depots and stuff like that will call hardboard MDF, and it's not. MDF is medium density, hardboard is hard density. So backing board, masonite, things like that, that's all hardboard. MDF is actually probably more of a paper type product. I don't remember right off the top of my head if they put any kind of wood fibers in it, but it has kind of a thick cardboard feel to it. But it still will grind and sand off. So, like I said, I went ahead and painted these white. I went in and airbrushed where I wanted my water. Then I came in around the sides and just put down some brown paint, just like I do on the trees and the terrain, and put down the grass flocking On top of that, after it dried, I went in and put a little bit of ballast on there and some rocks, and then went in and painted all this. That's the good thing too about flocking, is you can actually go in and paint it so that even though it's green, you can put brown on it. Once you let it dry, you can dry brush it. So you can see here, it's you can get really crazy with the edges. I went back in here and you can see I kind of put some paint and some stuff down, so I'd have some little high spots out in the water. I came back with some green and put in some moss kind of along the edges. Some of it floating like a little lilies out in the deal. And a lot of that you can buy too. You go out with some of the modeling supplies, you can find little lilies and flowers and just get as crazy as you want. I didn't get too wild on these because we were building these for tournament boards at the time. And I think we ended up building, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 of these things. There was a bunch of them. So that's a good way, an easy way to do water. There's nothing other than just the way that you paint it. Now, another technique that I'm going to show you is a little more advanced. A lot of the steps are the same. You want to start off with your MDF. You want to go in and cut it and put your slopes or however that you want to do it. What generally helps then is to kind of go in, and you can either use a pen or a pencil and put you in a little bit of a guide where you want your water to be, because we're going to build this up a little different. And all that you have to do here with this is, and hopefully the shortage is over in where you live, but you can use toilet paper, or you can even use paper towels. You want to try to avoid getting anything that has too much of a pattern in it. So so you want to kind of watch which side that you use, or find, especially if you're using paper towels, you can go out there and get those cheapy ones for cheap, and they don't hardly cost you anything, and they usually don't have any patterns. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to kind of get our toilet paper, and I'm going to do this half and half. That way I can show the toilet paper and then I can show you the paper towel. So you want to kind of get your toilet paper kind of in the general shape that you're wanting to go with. You want to set it on your board, and then this is the water glue mix that I use to cover and seal things in and stuff like that. It's 1 part PVA glue, which is Elmer's glue, and 10 parts water, all mixed up in a nice spray bottle. But you come in here right quick, give this a nice little soaking. You don't have to get crazy with it. You just want to get enough of it where it's a little wet like that. Then you want to have a stiff brush, and you can kind of work this into where you want your borders at. And again, this is up to you how you want to put this together. If you have a certain direction that you want your water, if you want to have some waves, you want to go a little bigger with it. But you want to tuck that all in. And you can come back and do other layers after it dries a little bit. Or you can try to put it on wet if you want to. But especially you can come in here now and kind of use the end of your brush to kind of stipple this up. This layer is more of my, I'm going to put the base down first here. So we're going to push that into my side, my borders. Like so, because when this glue and stuff dries, this thing will be as hard as a rock. So, but it generally takes a day or two for it to dry. So that's the reason I couldn't have any more done. But now you can come back in and put in some more paper. And you can just kind of, you can keep building it up. I mean, you can go and make it as deep as you want it, or so, you know, if you kind of think, well, all the wind is going to blow in from this direction. So no, you know, you can kind of come in here and just work from that direction. That way all your waves and your water is going the same way. Or you can smooth it all out and just put a lot of texture into it. But you can kind of push it with your brush a little bit and actually get little waves. Which when you go back to paint these, just they look incredible. But again, you want to try to keep everything kind of going in the same direction. Just like if you were looking out to do, looking out at a pond or whatever, you know, everything is not. So hopefully that shows up pretty good, kind of where how my wave pattern is going. If you've got kind of some lines going on, you can put a little extra glue there to kind of, you know, because toilet paper basically is just going to fall apart. But that way you can work those in a little bit more and kind of get rid of those lines. Get all that kind of smooth together. It's almost kind of like paper mache. I don't know if you did that when you were kids on different projects with little flour water and newspaper, but it's kind of the same process. And you know, if you had wanted to put some rocks in there, you could have glued those beforehand and built that up around some rocks out in the middle. Obviously, we would go back later and put some around the edge or whatever if we wanted to. But, and you can do the same thing, like I said, with paper towels, and it's a little thicker. So it'll start off right off the bat, giving you a lot of texture. Have to put a little more stuff on it to keep it. And you want to, where you've got it loose here, you can drag that back in there. That way it's not sitting on your board. But again, you can go in here and you're basically kind of getting this stuff to destroy. But you can see what I was talking about when you have a lot of more of a pattern in there. You have to be a little more aggressive with it. And you know, and there might be some different brands that you can look at that have may have a texture that you like. My preference is the toilet paper, just because it's thinner and it's easier to work with, and you can really get it to, and you don't have to stay right inside your lines. It's just helpful so that you kind of have a place to know where you're going to work from. So anyway, well, thank you, Chandler. Thank you for subscribing. So you can kind of get an idea of here's where this is at. So after you've kind of got it looking where you want it to look, and if you've put any rocks or anything in there, you know, because like I said, you can take, you know, bust one off of this here just to kind of show you what I'm talking about with the rocks. Throw a little more toilet paper down on our All right, so we go in here first and we get our pattern started, and we're still kind of working, thinking our wind is going this way. So we're going to build up our waves, or you can just stipple it if you want to. You don't have to have wake or waves or anything like that. But you can come in here or if you've already pre-glued a rock in here, but see, you can kind of come in here and decide where you want that rock is going to be. And you can actually, you know, kind of smooth the, you know, have a little of the rock, the wave coming up to it and going around it. And then kind of smooth it out on the other side, because the rock would kind of be messing the current up, but then you can push it up around there. And you can see it leaves a little, if you haven't already got it glued, it'll leave a little bit of a divot in there where the rock is at, so you can always come back and put it in later afterwards. But again, it's just whatever your little imagination will come up with. You can just get as crazy as you want. If you want to have really big waves, you can keep building it up. If you want small waves or just a little texture, then, you know, don't put as much of it down. But after you got it where you want it, I do suggest wiping off some of the liquid, especially if you haven't pre-painted anything. That'll just keep it from soaking up so much in there and taking a chance of it warping. It usually does okay, but, and you don't want to leave it sitting in the water or anything, because it'll soak it up as it sits there. But you can take this now and put it to the side, let it dry. Then after it's dry, you kind of go back and do what I showed you with the flat ones. Is now you can come in and, you know, spray it white and put a little blue in it and a little green, or, you know, and then with this dry and hard, you'll be able to come back in and dry brush over the water. So, you know, you could even go in after you've got your colors in there and put some darker blue or ink in there to get you some lower spots. Hi, Tiger, how are you doing? And then dry brush over it with the white, and you can kind of stipple around and get all kinds of right. And that's what I'm getting ready to show too. You're not limited to water. If you want to, you can take the same process and make lava, or if you wanted to have If you want to make like mud flats, you can come in and do the same thing. And again, you can put rocks in here. On these particular ones, I had some little half circle, like little speed bumps. I don't even remember what it was that I used. And put those in there on top to make it look like you had bubbles. You could do tar pits. I mean, you could, like I said, you can do lava. It's anything that you want to do. And again, this is just like I was showing with how we made these pieces here the other night. This is just styrofoam that's already been cut. We went in and painted it down. It's got blocking on the top that I painted over, some more rocks, added in some little green shrubbery. So, you know, just any kind of alien goop or coolant pools, or, you know, there's anything that you can think of that would be a liquid that this technique would work for. And once I have some of these made up on a show in a week or two, we'll kind of go and show you how to do some more finishing. But I just didn't have a chance to get these ready because of the convention over the weekend. Yeah, purple or neon green. One of the cool things I like to do, especially if I've got some concrete or something where I know calves have been, is I love taking and putting a little bit of glue around and let it dry and come back in and put put a real neon green, or the kind of the green color, the coolant color that was in the last the Templar paint set, just where it looks like some coolant, or blue where some coolant or some breeder fluid or something, T-gel, has fallen on the deal. That's just kind of little things that look good. So, any questions as at least to this part of the technique? All right, I'm going to take a little water break here right quick and try to get my voice. I don't see how you could get accustomed to my voice, Dave. Could you apply that to scenery for towers? I'm not sure what you're saying there, Chandler. You can attach it to anything. I mean, not that I would have ever done anything like this, but I don't know if you remember back in high school or junior high, getting toilet paper out of the bathroom and making toilet paper balls and throwing them up on the ceiling and they stick. Wet toilet paper, and especially with a little glue mixed into it, will stick to anything. So, yeah, you could have it like it was coming out of something, leaking barrels. Hi, Gimli, how are you tonight? If you have some stuff underneath it to support it, you can make waterfalls with this. You could make rapids over rocks. It's almost like, you know, it almost turns into kind of a putty that you can do whatever you want. And the stiffer the brush, you know, the more pattern you can really get in there. This is just kind of a stencil brush, so it's not as, I mean, it's stiff, but it's not super stiff. But it just does a really good job of, you know, and if you got to go back and work on it a little bit, put a little more water on it. It'll water back up. You can get a little smaller. And you know, as it gets closer to the shore, you know, you can put your waves a little closer together. And I know it's harder to see when it's still just kind of in its white stage like that, but after you get a base coat or something on it, it really starts showing up. And that's the nice thing. Like I said, you would, after this would dry and you get the water painted up the way that you want, you would come back around here and add, you could just put in flocking to build it up. If you wanted more of a kind of a waddy around it, you could build it up with some kind of putty or some wood filler is what I like to use a lot, because it doesn't, if it doesn't split or crack like some things. More rocks, more gravel. I mean, you put anything around it and build up the edges so it all makes one nice transition. Yeah, I mean, it's a really easy technique to do something like that. Another good thing too is, you know, if you got a hot glue gun, a lot of times you're trying to get something up on the side of something or whatever, you can take a little hot glue and let it run and smooth it out a little bit how you want, and then go back in and paint it. The only problem that you have to watch sometimes with the hot glue and stuff like that is it can later on over time, it'll kind of crack or pull back from an edge. So you have to go back and do some repair work at some point, but it's not anything major. I've got a little bit that over time that I've had to go back and do some of that with. It's always a learning experience. So I'm trying to teach you guys based on the stuff that I've done that didn't work. All right. Any more questions? We got about 5 minutes here that I want to work on the water and talk about it a little bit more, and then I'm going to switch over and you can kind of watch me put an MDF building together, and we'll chat and we'll talk and stuff like that, and you'll kind of see what goes into one if you haven't put one together yet. Could your calf hide in the water? Well, probably not. Calves are limited to elevation one water, which is basically 10 feet or less, unless they have the amphibious SA. Then at that point, they can go all the way underwater and can hide to their little heart's content. Yeah, it'll be interesting down the road to build some of these some calves with some of these more unique SAs in them that's more mission orientated. Like an amphibious one and stuff. Some of those will come out as variants and stuff, but you never know. We might do one as an open or something like that, just to have a kind of a unique look to it for something in particular that it does. Well, certainly if you've got mud, if you're playing on mud or tar or something like that, we plan on doing some alternate terrain rules with some of that stuff. We had a whole chapter of that written up for the rule book that we just didn't have room to put in there. So at some point I've been wanting to go back, and it may show up in the campaign book as since we have some alternate planetary stuff in there. But, you know, we would be vacuum rules, water rules, mud. You know, there's just so many different things that you could play in that change up a game, especially, you know, some things that, you know, would one shot some things and such. All right, so we're going to set the water aside for a little bit. Like I said, that'll be something that we'll come back in a later show and talk about, especially building rivers and such like that. So let's talk about MDF buildings. This is something that we've been working on that we want to get into, is doing laser cut MDF, cardboard, stuff like that. This is a sample piece that I put together. It's a mech bay. It's a four bay mech bay, and it was more of an experiment to kind of see some different techniques that we could do as far as building girdings and doorways and layering these things and stuff like that. How angles, how we could do some angles, how we can do some pieces on the side. Like I said, this is just a really basic piece that I did as a test piece. I'll come back and do a lot better version of it and stuff, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of when we're talking about MDF, some of the things that we can come up with. So yeah, this would be like a mech bay. I brought the CAV so you could kind of get an idea of scale. When you have 35 foot tall machines of war, we have our own in-house laser cutter now. It's a project that I wanted to do more with this summer, and with everything that went on, it just has fallen to the side a little bit. But that's one of the reasons that we've been clearing out the TT Combat stuff. Is I don't want to sell two different lines, and obviously I would rather sell our own. So we're getting rid of what we have left. So if you want to get some fast MDF terrain, we're selling all of our TT Combat stuff right now at TALON.games for 50% off. And one of the one that I'll be building tonight is actually a TT Combat one. It's one that I thought was really cool that they did, and I set it aside, and that's what I'm going to be working on. So let me pull a stretch here right quick, and we will start on it. The one that I am working on tonight is their Tyrosis building. Correct. Yeah, we'll be able to. We won't have to keep nearly as much. That's part of the problem that we've had with the TT Combat, is we brought so much of it in. Just the warehousing space that it took up was was huge. So by having it where we can just go to it as needed, um, I like it too, Tiger. It's a little more simple than what I wanted it to be at this point. Like I said, it was kind of a learning experience to kind of figure out how to make things fit together and things like that. So we won't cut to order. We'll keep a couple of in stock at all times as needed, but we don't have to be as deep in it. I don't need to have 20 or 30 of them over there on the shelf. Yes, Chandler, we are going to be doing acrylic tokens. And my preference for doing those tokens is going to be, we'll have faction colors. So there'll be different colors for whichever faction that you want to use. And we'll probably at least one symbol will have the faction logo on it. Now, this is one of their more expensive buildings. I think that with discount, it's around $19 right now, $19 or $20, somewhere right in there. As you can see, it's pretty substantial. So there's a lot of pieces to it. I don't remember if they really showed it in the newer version of Blade Runner, but this is basically a take off the building that was in the original Blade Runner movie. Obviously not nearly as big as what you saw in the movie, but it's cool because it's got a little fly-through area through it. So anyway, so we're going to start on it and work on it, and we'll talk and chat a little bit. And you can, if you've never put one together, this will give you an opportunity to kind of see what's involved in building one of these. They can look a little scary because of all the pieces, but they really are not. All right, so we need to find our starting pieces, like old school putting together model kits. All right, maybe we'll put it together. Well, hopefully this will inspire you to get to them. They're not as hard to put together as you might think that they would be. All right, so I think, of course, you have to have a college degree sometimes to figure out the order. Having the picture here will help too. What do I do with the picture? And luckily we do have instructions on the website for these. But they're designed, they pop out really easy if they're done right. So, you know, it doesn't take a lot of special tools. Every once in a while you get one that hangs up just a little bit, and that's the reason why I keep a knife. Where? That I can go in here and just kind of clip the little, if I've got a little hanger on. So we can, nice sharp knife will knock it right out of there. But you can come in and trim it back off. A little piece of sandpaper doesn't hurt. Well, we're gonna look at trying to do some roads, and some rivers. So uh, this is actually the base of the channel that flows through there. So we've got that. We've got this piece, which is the top. This is the Tyrosis building, the not Blade Runner building. Yeah, and you want to try to do your best to actually cut a tab when it's sticking, just so you don't, when you bust it out of there, it doesn't tear. Because like I said, this MDF is basically kind of a cardboard product, so when it comes out, it can tear. And usually, if you don't see anything on either side of it, it can go whatever way you need it to go. All right, now let's see if we can find the side pieces for it. And sometimes stuff just falls out on its own. Those are the good times. Those are when they're cut really good. All right, I'm gonna assume that that's those pieces there. They have little doors and little things on them to sometimes you can give them a little pop. That'll be enough to take them out. Like so. Voila. Okay, so on this particular one, we want to make sure that we are putting these on the right side because everything needs to point in. So that you can test fit them sometimes. They are really good about being pretty tight. So they're usually pretty good about going. And as Dave mentioned, sometimes you may have to round it off a little bit to get it going. A little sandpaper or a nice little flat file goes a long way. Mat board is okay if you get it thin enough. Generally 1 millimeter mat board is what you want to use. And some of this actually uses that for some of the details, especially on the smaller buildings. The mat board is a lot better for, and we will be using mat board too. We've got a clay coated board that we're going to be using. Okay, so for glue, they recommend PVA glue, just Elmer's glue, because with this being kind of a paper product and having a little bit of porous to it, it soaks in really good. I like to use this ProBond Advanced PVA glue. It seals better, and it is somewhat waterproof after it dries, so it makes it a little better when it comes time to paint, I think. But you just want to come in and you just want to put a little on the edge. Don't go too crazy because it doesn't take much. Once this stuff soaks in, it'll dry like it did. Of course, it doesn't really do you any good to put any on the bottom on this particular piece because it's just going to push through, and then you'll have glue all over what you're working on. So here we'll get these all lined up. Maybe give them a good press. Everything keeps itself pretty straight once you get it all in there. If you see any gaps, give it a little tug. Now, you'll get a little glue sometimes. Just use a little wetted, just a little bit to clean that up. Make sure you don't have any on the bottom or you'll end up gluing it to whatever you're working on. Voila. First pieces together. You could leave it just like this and have a sky X-Wing fighter trench. Ta-da-ta. I picked this building because I don't know if you can see right here talking about how the layers are of, it's basically pressed cardboard that but you can see where it's coming loose a little bit. The glue will fix that when it goes together, but you kind of want to watch it when you're putting it in because it may catch. But when we first got these in, I set me aside one of each that I thought would look cool to do later, and I just haven't had time to work on them. So I thought that this would be a good project to work on tonight, as we're all kind of catching up from CAVCon. I'm going to come in from this side to help that split go in there a little better. Possibly. Just kind of push it in a little bit with your knife and I think that one they might have overcut just a little bit. But it'll be all right. Once we paint it, you'll never notice it. Well, like I said, I enjoy the hobby, and there's so much information out there, but it's spread out everywhere. So I figure if I concentrate on I don't think I'll be making any PVA glue. I said, there's a lot of people, if I'm not big on reinventing the wheel. So if somebody out there is already doing it and it's better than anything that I can do, then I'm not going to mess with it. All right, so now we get to glue on the top, and here I can put it on the side that's going to actually touch what we're looking at. This is one of those that's any way you want it to go. I tried it sometimes on these what happens is as this stuff cuts, it basically converts whatever it's cutting into smoke. And so you get smoke residue or glue or something. So I try to do the black if I can to keep it from showing, because I think this will all be covered up. That way I don't have to worry about paint acting funny with it. Line it all up. Another project that I've got that I want to work on that I'll show at one point is there was a company called Impudent Mortal, and the guy Walt that ran that made some really great stuff, and he was a big BattleTech guy. He had approached me at NashCon last year about working together and do some CAV projects. And one of the things that he had built was a kind of a drop ship, and it was more scaled. It was kind of a small drop ship for 28 millimeters, so it makes for a bigger one for 10 millimeter. So I've kind of got to adjust the cockpit and everything for it. But unfortunately, Walt passed away this year. It was very unexpected. He was on his way home from a convention, or had just finished a convention that day. And so we were very sad to hear that he had passed. And I don't know what his wife, who traveled with him, is planning to do with their stuff. Yeah. And so I don't know if you'll be able to even get some of these kits that they had done. But he gave me one of their drop ships, and I want to put it together and change the cockpit out a little bit. I thought I would come up with a cool name and a neat logo to put on it, and kind of in memory for Walt. It was a very, very sad deal. All right, so now that I've bummed us all out, we've got our first piece together, the channel that goes through the middle. So we'll set that here for a minute, and then we will look. Looks like the next pieces that we need are these right here. Possibly, maybe. I will say this, on all Walt's kits, usually all this stuff was already cut out. A lot of companies don't cut it out all the way, and they leave these little tabs to kind of hold it in there because it makes it easier for them to handle when they're packaging. I haven't decided which way I'm going to go yet. Probably it would depend on how complicated it is too. Obviously, if there's lots more parts, it's a lot easier just to put sheets in there as opposed to trying to come up with little pieces. That's the only thing that's really intimidated me about Walt's dropship, is it's this huge big old bag about this thick full of pieces. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to figure out how that's all going to go together. All right, got that piece, we got that piece, and then I saw the other one that I needed. La 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 la, somewhere. I thought I saw the piece that I needed. All right, I'll go back through it again. If I didn't have my head attached, I'd lose it sometimes. All right, here we go. Sprue or not sprue? Yeah, that is the eternal question. That one and that one. I planned on working on one of these at CAVCon too, and we just didn't get around to it. We got too used to hearing ourselves talk. All right, there's those two pieces. All right, so it looks like these kind of go off to the side right now, like so, and then they fit in here. Gimli, I'm probably by maybe October. Certainly by the end of the year, we'll start having our first kits in there. We've kind of got tied up with trying to get the miniatures situation kind of worked out. So everything's been kind of on the side till we have a more of an idea of what we're doing there. But like I said, there's the TT combat stuff is great, and there is a lot of that still up on the store. So if you're anxious and want to get started, you know, grab some TT combat stuff. There's some really cool kits in there. I'm not as wild about some of the apartment buildings after we got them in, because I think they're the right scale, but they're a little more, I don't know, 1920s, 1930s kind of look to them. So for fast filler, it's great. It's not necessarily a look that I'm after, but they sell really well. So people must like them. Just not my cup of tea. Yes, Chandler, the Mastodon is on the list, but I will give you fair warning that it is getting pretty major redesign as far as its overall look. Yeah, it's got some deco look to it, and there's some of their kits that they put together for the 40K mech game, whatever that is, Adeptus Titanus or whatever. But they're all right. I built a couple of them that we used one time for something, and I left out some of the skulls and some of the parts, and they looked fine. They have a lot of new kits that they just came out with too. TT Combat took over the Dropship Commander game. And that's really where their 10mm line originally started from. So they just released a new version. Yeah, and that's exactly what they're for. Most of the apartment kits come with 3 or 4 of them, and when you're just trying to have some stuff down the street, and I think they're 4 or 5 levels tall at least. So you know, they're great. That's anything that you can get by with for cheap. All right, so there's our next piece that goes over our piece like that. But what I was trying to say is they came out with a lot of more kits recently. There's some really cool ones in there. I think that there's a couple that, and 10mm can be quite subjective, that I think is off a little bit scale wise. But I think there's like a soccer stadium or a sports stadium and stuff like that. We're not going to bring them in because we had decided we were moving in this direction. If you can find them in the U.S., that's great. They are out of England, so if you order direct from them, it gets a little pricey because you're paying shipping and whatnot. That was kind of one of the reasons we brought them in the way that we did, because since we brought so many of them at one time, it really let us split the shipping out a little bit so that it wasn't so bad. And who knows, if nobody ends up wanting our kits, then we may have to bring them back in. Chandler, we'll make whatever anybody asks us to make. I would love, especially to do kits that people haven't done. You know, there's it's like the mech bay. There's lots of little resin things and stuff like that, but there's no really cool MDF kits for mech that would be great for mech bays. But fortress walls, communication stations, all kinds of cool stuff. Gentlemen's nightclubs. The Lucky Seven will live again. All right, looks like it's time to put the roof on. The roof is on fire. All right. So we're going to put this down. Yeah, and that's especially in the 10 millimeter that so many people did it for the Adeptus Titanium, which I think they're actually 8 millimeter is what they originally went with, but it's close enough. That's a good thing when you get in the 8, 10, and 12 millimeter. It all kind of works together. And you know, I want to do some CAV stuff that's, you know, more specific to the CAV game, but we'll do a lot of generic stuff too. So there's some cool things that I think would be fun to put together. I figure we'll do a sub drop ship in MDF too. That would be a little cheaper alternative for people to be able to use. All right. These are the ones when it gets tricky. You got multiple stuff to try to get to fit. Well, you know, one of the things too, Gimli, that really hasn't been done that I want to do is just normal size houses. There's no really, you know, all that stuff that they always put out. It's always these apartment buildings and stuff like that. But it would be cool just to build neighborhoods of homes and stuff like that that you could come crashing through. All right, now you don't want to put too much pressure on these because again, because of the cardboard, I'm collapsing down on you. Generally, I try to start from one corner and work my way around. Possibly, maybe. I like a tight fit, but sometimes it can be a little annoying. I was trying to go together. Yeah, because you know, in the future they're going to drop in and 3D print houses or whatever, and yay, we got it together. And no gaps either. Oh, there's a gap. Well, and MDF gets a little harder to try to do that. I know that we're planning on trying to do some, we're also going to be doing some resin kits and some 3D print files that'll probably be more set up like that where you can stack stuff. MDF really benefits from everything being glued together. Well, you know what? Hang in there, and before you know it, you might get a chance to see. So, I'm not saying that we've already come up with the look, but you never know. Very possibly. Like Willy Wonka's factory around here, we're always working on something. All right, so now we have this. That apparently goes in here, okay? Apparently I was supposed to do that in the last step, and I didn't realize that's what they were showing. So we're gonna have to, but it'll still go. We're all good. Maybe. Well, I thought that's what it wanted. It doesn't want that. Right. Something is not kosher in the middle. All right, so we're going to see if we can get this all to pop in here. Oh, I think I just heard the first batch of Cobras and Spatha tanks finish up. Yay! I typically, it's funny because you'll look at it and sometimes with some of the lines you go, oh my gosh, if I put too much paint on there, I'll cover up the detail. You know, I've sprayed the hell out of these before and it's amazing. It's a lot deeper than you think. I typically try to primer them first with a light gray primer and then go back, and that way let the cardboard soak up the primer rather than my first coat of paint. then I can go back and airbrush it or do whatever I want to. Tiger, a bunch. The machines will be going for 2 or 3 days. So if anybody that put big orders in, hang tight in there. We'll get you out this week, but we are trying to get everything ready. We had quite a few people go pretty big, so. All right, so there is our middle section, lower section, or whatever, of our tower. These are just so cool. They're fun to put together. They're easy. I mean, sometimes you got to kind of grit your teeth to get them to go. No, it's not a bad thing. I did find it interesting that we did as much in sales in 3 days of a virtual convention as to what we did last year physically being there for 4 days. I'll have to put my thinking cap on that to figure that out. But that was a pleasant surprise, because obviously not going to shows all year has, we count on that being a lot of our operations. So, and it's hard to go to the government that, if you don't really need the money, if you're a Harvard University and you go, hey, can we have a little money? And they send you $60 million. And then you're a small game company and you try to explain what you do. And you're like, hey, can we get a little help through this? And no, not really. We don't know what you do. You're too weird. Maybe we can take a little bit of our sales and buy new stools. Well, please don't let your wife kill you. I wouldn't want that on my conscience, Cthulhu. And I'll work around it a little bit. Yeah, new stools. Well, these were not originally bought for a Twitch show. It may get a little tricky, Dave, painting this down in here. This might have been something that should have been built first or painted first, but I bet I can figure out a way to do it. Nothing a little spray paint down the tunnel won't fix. All right, so we are ready to put the sides on this thing. We got about 20 minutes. So let's do that part. And that'll get us, and then we'll get her finished up at another time. All right, anybody have any questions as far as anything CAV related or anything you want me to visit while I'm here about, or? You want to know how I spent my Monday after CavCon? All ready to relax, maybe cook a hamburger or something, And lo and behold, right at the first of the early afternoon, my neighbor comes knocking on the door and tells me that a tree just fell from our side of the property on top of her house. So I had to run up to the shop and get a chainsaw and some stuff, and me and my boys spent most of Monday chopping a tree down. They are not hard, Kruger. They do a pretty good of cutting them. They leave just a little, maybe even, I don't know, even a half a millimeter tab. I like to use a sharp scalpel knife. Yeah, you left on the right day, or you got to help cut down tree. And that way I can just kind of punch through where the line is, where I see it. And that's just because I try to be a little cleaner with it. You can usually even just tap on them and they'll fall out. But because this is kind of a cardboard type product, you can tear it a little bit, or it leaves a little, and again, a little piece of sandpaper. I ran off and forgot to grab any sandpaper, but a little piece of sandpaper, a little trim, it'll come right off there. You want to try to keep the sides intact as much as you can, because when they cut this, it seals the edge, gives it that dark deal. So as long as you don't get into it, like here, if you can see here where it's kind of peeling apart a little bit, but you can put just a little glue in there and push it back together, and that usually will keep it all nice and tight. Just put a little glue in there like so, work it in there with your finger, pinch it shut and hold it for a second, and it'll be good to go. And I don't know if you can see it good, but we're talking about the lines and you're worried about filling in the lines. You can look here where they cut. The lines go almost halfway through this MDF board. So, when you put paint on there, unless you're just dabbing it on there, you're not going to fill in those lines. So that's the reason I always, especially if you're putting a lot of colors on there, always try to airbrush them or use spray can bottles. That way it will really let the lines keep showing through. And then we will be back tomorrow night, me and James, and we will be talking some CAV things. So if you have any questions, certainly about the games this weekend, or get those ready for us. And we will be ready to, this is the other cool thing too, when they do these, leave them on the sprues, is they leave a lot of the pieces that ended up cutting out, and they're not for the model, they're throwaway pieces, but they've got lines already cut on them. They're little pieces, great for adding on to other kits, something that you're trying to build. Yeah, you can do that. You can get the little bushes and stuff and hang them on there and make little groups of moss and stuff. Another cool thing that you can do to it too is they make that texture paint, and you can put that first coat down with the spray texture paint, and that will give it a little bit of grit, so that when you go in and paint it, the paint has something to grab onto. Those can look really cool. Give it kind of a stucco or a concrete look to them. I mean, and that's there is no wrong way to do terrain. I mean, to me, the most important thing when you're building terrain is just think scale. That's the only pet peeve that I have about terrain. If you're if you're, especially on the smaller games, some of the stuff, it can look really funny. And you may be all right with that. I'm just telling you what my pet peeve is. So, you know, a 10 millimeter door is, about 5/8 of an inch tall and about 3/16 of an inch wide. So, you know, it's just stuff like that that you want to me, you want to take into account so that it looks right with the models. I think this building will make a super, super cool centerpiece. It's tall enough and it's wide enough at the base that it'll be really good for blocking line of sight. So it'll be a really good centerpiece. I'll probably go back and build a, that's another thing, another class that I want to do is facing buildings, where you can make little blocks with sidewalks or driveways or parking lots. Those are really cool to, especially if you're not playing on a pre-done city board or something. If everything's got its own block around it, you can just set them on the board right next to each other, and voila, you have a. Well, you probably could. I think it's, I don't, is that on the high or the low part? It's on the low part. You could, it looks like it'd be about 3 levels up, so you could stand at one end and shoot through the tunnel if somebody was on the other end, I think. I'll know better after I put it together. And they look like they did a pretty good job on their scale doors. I mean, these are double doors. So, you know, you've got 5/8 of an inch height, so that's pretty close. A couple of 3/16 inch doors. If you're going with regular doors, your normal doors are generally 36 inches wide, and 6'8", so about 80 inches tall. So you can scale that out and get a pretty good idea of how big to make your doors. I know that we had a sheet out there at one time. It's probably on the Reaper forums. I'll have to go and see if I can find it again, where I went in and sized a lot of things, windows, doors, things like that, so that if you're drawing stuff or trying to figure something out, here's what they are. And again, because scale can get kind of subjective, I consider 10 millimeter to be 1/180th. Some people agree with me. Some people say it's 1 1/60th. To me, 1 1/60th is more 12 millimeter. But, you know, that's just the way these game scales have ended up. You know, they consider 15 millimeter to be 1/100th, but it's really not. One true 15 millimeter scale should be about 1 1/20th. But 1 100th has become kind of the accepted scale. So if you're going to make something that you want to look good with 15 millimeter, you got to make it all 1 100th. There wasn't a whole lot when we decided to go 10 millimeter. There wasn't a whole lot of 10 millimeter stuff out there. It's just really kind of caught on the last 5 years or whatnot. And that's one of the reasons we went with 10 millimeter is we really wanted to kind of help establish the scale. So we figured if that's what we made it and we got big enough, then that's what everybody would use. That hasn't happened yet, but hey, it is what it is. All right, so now we can put on the outside walls for the lower part, maybe. Like they're gonna go on the little pegs here. All right, well, we're down to the last 10 minutes or so. Any questions? Anything I can answer for you tonight? Any ideas that you want us to talk about tomorrow night? All right, got to pull this over here a little bit where I can get a little closer to it here. Electronic warfare. Okay, well, I will put that on my list for tomorrow and have some notes, and we will talk electronic warfare tomorrow. That's always a good one. Some of these shapes get a little tricky. Actually, C3 points are pretty easy to use. We weren't using them just because we didn't want to throw too many concepts down, because I know we knew that a lot of people were still kind of learning, so we could kind of concentrate on the basics. But like in the battle Sunday, when I had 3 squads, James had 2, that would have given me 3 command points and him 2 points to use during the game. But we'll talk about them. Those are 2 good things to talk about. So James, put those in your thinking cap. We're going to talk electronic warfare and C3 points tomorrow. Okay, so that gets that wall on. We'll come back and work on it again at a later time. And as to your question about shooting through, James or Chandler, that is at a level 3. So I believe that a Cav could shoot straight through there. What do you think? Might make for an interesting, because you could get right here and have heavy cover and shoot right through there, right through the hole. You'd have a very straight, limited line of sight, but by the same token, nobody could shoot you unless they got right in front of the hole. Okay, so I'm on direct fire only. Yes, through the hole. Now he could indirect fire over the building, but as far as shooting through the hole, it would be direct fire only. All right, guys. Well, I think we've had a good talk tonight. We managed to fill the whole 2 hours up. So, being at all that it is Taco Tuesday, Miss CAVBoss is probably waiting for me to get home. But we'll put some more of this together. We'll get later on where we'll paint it and show you some stuff there. And we will, tomorrow night, we will talk about electronic warfare and C3 points and whatever else we can fit in for the hour. I doubt that we will do CAV racing this Wednesday night, just because we haven't been able to get to some of the stuff we wanted to do with it because of CAVCon. Now that we've got channel points and stuff working, we've got some ideas so that everybody can be a little more interactive with it. And we'll try to work on that to have not for this show, but the show afters. But anyway, anything last 2 minutes anybody wants to get in? Anybody got any hot stock tips or anything good like that that they want to share? Well, thanks. I enjoy doing them, Dave, and I'm glad that people appreciate them. It's fun. Once we get it down a little better, it'll be a little smoother and a little better organized. But we're kind of just like CavCon is. We're learning as we go. So, one thing I did want to point out: a lot of people don't always realize that we have, and I want to put some on. I meant to try to get to it here, but. We have decals for all the major factions. Fighting Piranha Graphics does those up for us. And we have both the standard faction ones and then their tactical ones, which are black and white, depending on which color you want to use. We have those available on our website direct that we can send out with an order if you want them or whatever. So don't forget to look under accessories and the Fighting Piranha Graphics that we have at the TALON.game site, and we can get you some decals if you're interested. They're real easy to use. The printer that they use allows it to have white. They put a white background under everything, so it's basically you just kind of cut it out, and we'll have one night we'll do some terrain stuff too, or some decals to show you how to put those on, even on sizes and shapes that you never thought that you'd be able to get on there. So anyway, let's call it a night, and we will be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock Central Time with Cav HQ Live. You guys have a good night and be safe.